This is the state of the nation. Ibifa Uganda. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Henry Sally. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Henry Sally, and this is the state of the nation. To start, I am starting with this message to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day. I hope you are as excited to celebrate this beautiful day as I am excited to celebrate you. Happy Mother's Day to my beloved wife, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I'm not going to mention you, but I do appreciate you a lot. All right, so this is the state of the nation. As I have mentioned, we had some kind of challenges earlier. I was unable to log on to StreamYard for some reason. So I had to postpone the show to an hour later. So we are starting an hour later, but we are here nonetheless. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. As we discuss a few issues that are happening in our country, beloved country, Uganda. We were scheduled to have a broader panel discussion. So our guests are still navigating the logins. One of them is actually still on his way, and his phone seems to be down for now, but he should be joining us as soon as he's able to. So I will bring them directly into the conversation, but this topic is far too important to be postponed. So let me begin. Tonight, we are discussing something bigger than a single bill. I know the protection of the sovereignty bill has been the conversation in the last couple of days, but we have to go beyond that. So we are going to discuss power, we are going to discuss sovereignty, and we are also going to discuss the future of the Ugandan state. Because this week marks a significant moment in Uganda's history. Last week, Parliament passed the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026, and it now awaits the presidential assent. At the same time, President Museveni prepares to be sworn in, again after being declared winner of the recent presidential election. And surrounding this moment is something deeply symbolic. First, the president's son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, now heads the military as the chief defense forces. We all know this. His brother, General Salim Saleh, remains one of the most influential figures in Uganda's political security architecture. So when you look at the pyramid right now, we have three generals at the top. One political center, and also have one state increasingly defined by continuity. So today, I want us to move beyond headlines and ask more critical questions. Number one, what happens when sovereignty, military power, and executive authority increasingly converge? And what happens when all this is happening using some of the institutions that we legally respect? And perhaps most importantly, what does political transition, what does it mean now in Uganda? So I want to encourage you to share as much as possible to as many people as you can reach. So as we continue to wait for the folks that are going to join us in this conversation, I want us to interrogate further why this bill, the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, exists. And it is important because it's in our best interest to interrogate these questions. Why is it important? Because there is a legitimate concern at the heart of it. Mr. Museveni has continually said that it is foreign influence at the center of policy formation that he disagrees with and that must be deterred legally and by all possible means. There's no doubt that foreign influence is real. I think we all know that. We have seen it in different countries. We have seen it. We have seen foreign influence in Libya. We have seen foreign influence in Mali. We have seen foreign influence in several African countries, including the DRC right now, and the surrounding countries, of course. Across the world, governments are grappling with it. There's foreign interference in elections in most countries, especially those in the global south. Of course, there's manipulation through NGOs. There's, as I said last week, digital propaganda. There's foreign-funded political influence. Of course, there's economic coercion. And this comes from mostly some of the biggest institutions in the world, including the World Vision and IMF. These conversations have been delved into by a lot of people, including Dambisa Moyo. And of course, there is geopolitical pressure. Therefore, there is no serious country that ignores these realities, including countries like the US, Canada, and all other global north countries. And Uganda, given its history, has understandable reasons to be conscious. Uganda is a post-colonial state, for starters. It has experienced external interference, donor dependence, structure adjustment pressures, foreign political influence, and of course, security vulnerabilities. So when a government says that we want to protect sovereignty, that is not automatically unreasonable. In fact, many Ugandans would agree with that, in my opinion. So national policy should not be outsourced. Elections should not be manipulated, either externally or internally. and foreign funding should be transparent. Those are legitimate concerns, and that is important to acknowledge if we are really being honest with ourselves. Because if we try to dismiss those facts, then we are being intellectually dishonest. Right? But here is where the issue begins. The question is not should Uganda protect its sovereignty? I think the real question should be how, right? And more importantly, at what cost? Because good intentions do not automatically produce democratic law. And in this, and at this moment, the the protection of sovereignty bill begins to unravel the deeper implications. So, at the heart of this bill lies a contradiction. And I want us to interrogate this contradiction closely. The bill claims to protect the sovereignty of the people. But in practice, it centralizes it centralizes the exercise of sovereignty within the state itself. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say, but let me try to explain this. Uganda's constitution is very clear. Article 1, for example, says that power belongs to the people, not the presidency, not the military, and not the minister. So why am I bringing in the presidency, the military, and the minister? We know that they have just passed the military bill, and they also passed it in a manner similar to how the sovereignty bill was passed. But we also know that before the sovereignty bill was passed or amended, the president had to give in his opinion, to which the attorney general seemingly listened and apparently amended the bill, the initial bill. So think about the UPDF Act. Think about how the president influenced the recently passed Protection of Sovereignty Bill, and think about how much power the minister is going to have in implementing some of the intricates of the sovereignty bill. So the people exercise that sovereignty in accordance with the constitution. So if power belongs to the people and people exercise that sovereignty in accordance with the constitution. Now listen carefully to what this bill does. This bill creates broad categories. Of course, talks about foreigners, and I know that there has been an amendment on how Ugandans in the diaspora are now categorized. But it talks about foreigners, agents of foreigners, and disruptive activities. But it also gives enormous power to the Minister of Internal Affairs to determine who falls under these definitions, right? So who may register, who may operate, and who may receive funding. Also, who may continue practicing in civic life. And that is extraordinary power. I'm trying to see if my folks are joining me. So I think Dr. Selonkuma has joined us. Of course, when Council Semakande comes in, also let him come in as well. So I'll let in Dr. Selonkuma as soon as possible because he's here. Just a moment. Right. Professor Selonkuma, do you hear me? You can unmute yourself and let me know if you hear me. For folks who are still here with us, please share widely, and of course comment as to let me know that you are there as well. To let me know that you are there. Before Professor Selonkuma comes in, I'm going to play something that is going to give you some context on what really foreign influence looks like and how Mr. Museveni himself has been ironically participating in foreign interference of other countries. So most of you might have already seen this, but I want you to look at it more critically as well.
Called Idi Amin.
Oh, yes.
He was the president of our country.
Yes.
Gaddafi sent in troops to back Idi Amin.
For heaven's sakes.
I was one of the leaders leading the other side. So this was way before you started.
Well, then I'm preaching. I'm preaching to the choir. Here.
Yes.
Well, it's true. I know what you accomplished.
Gaddafi
and what
sent
you've
in
done.
4,000 soldiers, fighters, in 1978.
Isn't that funny? I don't know how that escaped me, and I wasn't aware of it at all. Well,
4,000 soldiers, fighters, backing Idi Amin, if you remember Idi Amin.
yes. Well, then you don't need any. Oh, I do. Yes, I know very much about him. You don't need any warnings from me about it.
No, we don't. We
Mr.
don't.
Gaddafi.
We don't. But the only thing about Gaddafi, why we're working with him, is on just one point: the south to south.
So that is something that I want us to interrogate critically. One thing about Gaddafi that he was talking about, he was given an opportunity to talk about how they can manage Gaddafi, right? And he talks about it casually, right? So he was participating in interference of Gaddafi's government, even though Gaddafi worked closely with him during his revolution to bring Uganda fundamental change. Right, he sponsored him. He gave him refuge in his country. He financed a lot of his operations while he was coming to Uganda to become president of Uganda. Right, and then Mr. Museveni also further goes on to define what law means and how law can be used to either entrench power in the stronger or oppress the weak. And I also want you to listen to that conversation. I'm hoping that Professor Selonkuma will be ready by then, and then we can delve into this conversation further. But listen to Mr. Museveni here.
Of oppression and exploitation, or depending on the nature of the state in a given society, law can be an instrument of oppression and exploitation or of social justice and progress. Law is not synonymous with justice. It's not always synonymous with justice. It can be, but it may not be. What is legal is not necessarily what is just. Law can be used by the strong against the weak, by the rich against the poor, by the minority against the majority. Historically, law has been used by the oppressor against the oppressed. During the slave period, slaves were owned and disposed of like chattels, and it was perfectly legal to own a slave. The NRM government is strongly opposed to having laws on our statute books which serve the interests of the minority as against the majority of our people. Or which
Well, you know, history is very important because history reminds us of how people really think, and when people speak, you get to understand where they really fall in terms of how they interpret certain things, but also what they really think as a people. And this is important because listen to how Mr. Museveni was speaking in the early 80s when he had just come into power. And then use that information to try to understand how he operates right now or how he has been operating over the years. 2 weeks ago, Council Semakade told us that a lot of things that have been happening in Uganda have been mini coups. So our constitution has engaged in mini coups on several occasions, right? Including the most recent, which is the protection of sovereignty bill. Of course, he called that another coup as well. He is someone who understands that you can actually use the law to oppress people, right? You can also use the law to entrench yourself into power. Council Selunkuma, are you ready to join us? You ready to let me know when you're ready to join us? To entrench yourself into power. So he uses the law. He knows that when I use the law, I can continue to oppress Ugandans. And he has strategically found people who can help him do his job. Legally oppress people. Now he has legally created an avenue to keep outsiders who could potentially keep him accountable in terms of managing human rights, ensuring that folks are able to fight for human rights. You won't be able to fight for human rights anymore because it will be called interference, and he strategically positions it as influencing policy conversations, right? He doesn't want influencing policy conversations whatsoever. That is the man we are talking about today, right? So, we know that the minister has been given enormous power. The Minister of Internal Affairs, of course. He determines who falls under the definitions in the sovereignty bill, who may register, and who may operate, right? He also determines who may receive the funding and how they may continue participating in civic life, right? So that is extraordinary power. And as constitutional lawyer Philip Kalugawa argued in his parliamentary hearing, he said that this bill does not merely protect sovereignty, it displaces it. I think he did underscore that in his recent article as well. when he congratulated Mr. Museveni for congratulating NRM MPs. And I think that is the key insight, because sovereignty is no longer exercised naturally by the citizens, right? Instead, participation increasingly becomes permission-based. And once participation becomes permission-based, sovereignty stops being a right? Because it becomes an administrative privilege. And that is a profound constitutional shift. So now let us talk about perhaps the most controversial aspect of this bill. We know that a foreigner is a non-citizen. We also know that a foreigner could include foreign governments as well as international organizations, right? We now know that Ugandans are no longer included in the foreigner category, according to the amended bill, right? So now that some of the Ugandans or Ugandans abroad are not included in the foreigner category, which guarantee do we have that they won't be included if someone is needed, if the government wants to take down someone? Are we sure that they're going to be protected despite this bill, right? Because we don't know that. They could use the bill to get whoever they want. Because interpretation is not defined in the bill, right? Which means that interpretation will depend on whoever is implementing the law. And they could arrest you, take you to prison, and by that time, you are given an opportunity to exonerate yourself. You have gone through a series of operations. You're being oppressed because you're unable to interpret the law in a way that keeps you protected. Professor, are you able to unmute yourself now?
Hello.
There you
hear me
go.
now?
I do hear you. I hope other folks hear you as well. Can you comment if you hear Professor speaking?
No, I didn't hear anybody speaking. As I said, he might in this studio.
Yeah, but we hear you. I do hear you. I assume that other people hear you as well.
I can hear you.
Great. Are you settled in now?
I'm not. I can't say fully settled in, but I'll be in and out. But I mean.
Okay, great. Well, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I don't know what you mean by introducing myself, but my name is Yusuf.
Well, people already know you. People already know who you are.
It depends on the context, because in different spaces, I introduce myself differently. But I think for purposes of this space, I would say I am a columnist to the Observer newspaper. I take so much pride in writing for the Observer. So I think that's how I get to appear in spaces like this, because I write a weekly column with the Observer.
Yes.
And I'm so happy that I have wonderful readers who often read and give me feedback. So yeah, I think that's how I should get into this space. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining the State of the Nation. This is a daily, a weekly podcast that happens every Sunday from 6 to about 8 p.m. So today we are discussing three things. Mostly three things. Of course, we are discussing the sovereignty bill, which was passed by Parliament. We are also discussing, we are interrogating power uh, and the unfolding transition, to to to
Is
to say the
is it
least.
unfolding? Have you seen it? Is it
It's,
unfolding?
is it unfolding? Well,
Have you seen the
you,
transition? Because I'm always,
we
let me
could say
say,
it is happening. Well, when it is happening, you would think that it's unfolding. Of course, this is something to interrogate further.
Henry, have you seen any sign? I haven't seen any sign of the transition. Have you seen anything?
Well, have I seen anything? I
Yeah,
know that every 5 years they call it a transition, right? So every 5 years they. So
okay,
that's
that's
the context in which I'm talking about a transition, right?
okay, okay.
You know what I mean? Because there are semantics for having elections. Every time you have an election, someone seemingly uh, defines himself as a legitimate president, right? I'm now the legitimate president because I went through an election cycle and I was voted, and people have given me another mandate for the year. But there is also another transition beyond the current president that could be happening, right? Because I want us to look back to the conversation when General Sejusa talked about the horse project, and most people thought it was a joke. We never took it seriously. A lot of us thought, that could may or may not happen, right? But now we are looking at a pyramid at the pinnacle that has three powerful generals, including the president of the country, General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, uh, the CDF, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, and of course his uncle, General Salim Saleh, who is a senior advisor to the president. And also someone who is in charge of the wealth creation project, which means he has a lot of power, not just military power, but also some sort of financial power, because he controls who gets money and who gets invested into to become so-called rich or wealthy. The wealth creation projects that happen on a regular basis, right? So in that context, I would also think that there's a transition happening, right? Explicitly or implicitly. But of course, we may need to interrogate a few questions before we talk about the transition. I guess what we need to talk about briefly is what the stated purpose of the Protection of Sovereignty Bill really was. Uh, I guess in this amended bill, what remain as the dangerous provisions in practical terms? What are the dangerous provisions of the bill in practical terms, right? How does it redefine how we participate or who participates politically? But also, how does the diaspora engage with civic spaces in Uganda after the passage of the protection bill? And I guess we can start from that, from there. Well, So Professor Selukuma keeps jumping off and on. So I appreciate folks who are still on and who are listening in. Godfrey, thank you so much for joining us and for continuing to share. So please continue sharing. Yusuf is coming back. Somakade, for some reason, is as as
Hi, Henry. I'm back.
I know, welcome back. So, did you hear the question, or should I go back? I think I was trying to give you the context
Yeah,
of what I think.
okay. I wanted to speak to. There's something that you said about the transition, which I think
Yeah,
is without basis. No, no, there's no transition happening at the moment. I think everybody is looking forward to one, but nothing is happening. I think we are impatient to see any signals towards the transition, but I think nothing's happening. And I think what has made the country nervous is that we don't see any signs of a transition yet. It looks to the country that we deserve to have some signposts right now. Yeah, I think that's why everybody is nervous. I think not many people are talking about it because many people are afraid of talking transition because sort of, it looks like a treasonable thing to do to talk about transition. But
right.
if you ask me, there is no signal towards the transition. Moving from 7 to 7 is not a transition. If you talk about transitioning, you can't transition from being a man to another man or another woman to another woman. You
Right.
transition from childhood to adulthood. We can't be transitioning from 7 to 7. The man is
Right.
sharing in next week. So if he's sharing it, there's nothing like a transition happening. You see? But I also want to speak to what appears like a family dynasty. It looks like Ugandans are quite afraid of Moho's Kainerugaba as president. I tell you what, Henry, I
Yeah.
think Moho's Kainerugaba would be good for Uganda under the circumstances, right?
Yeah. Let me. Yeah. I would like to hear more about that.
And you're speaking to a scholar, not a politician, not a populist. Mohozi is good for Uganda because, first of all, it is difficult to move from Museveni to Kiza Besigye, difficult to move from Museveni to His Excellency Bobi Wine. It's not possible. Not anywhere. You saw what happened in Egypt when they moved from Mubarak to Morsi. Only after a year there was a coup. You see, the point I'm making is that there's so many vested interests, both local and international, by people who actually have money and control Uganda's economy. They can't allow a movement from Museveni to somebody they don't know. You see, they have been trying to understand who Bobi Wine is. When he first emerged on the scene, they gave him fellowship to the United States. Because every institution in the U.S. is part of American foreign policy, from university to media houses. So when they offer you fellowship at a place such as Harvard, it looks like an innocent fellowship for you to sort of upgrade yourself. But the fellowship is some sort of intelligence gathering. So the American government wants to know who is Bobi Wine. If we trusted him with Uganda, can he allow us access to Ugandan resources? Boom 7 has been doing it for us. You see, so Americans in the first place cannot allow Uganda to move from Yoweri Museveni, somebody they barely understand. Okay, because they have very, very heavy vested interest. So that's point number one. The point number two, there's so many thieves in Uganda who have stolen around Yoweri Museveni and would fight blood and tears if somebody who will wipe out their lives and livelihoods became president. So they too would drag the country into turmoil if we move from Yoweri Museveni to Bobi Wine because they may not know what Bobi Wine's promise is.
Right.
And in that case, they may want to sabotage Bobi Wine's presidency. And for them, when they try to sabotage, they don't do it in words. They do it in action because they have money and access to many other things. So both local and foreign interests will not allow moving from the guy we don't like to a guy we like so much. You see, it's not possible, but it's good to dream. It's good to dream, and the fire with which we dream, sets the standard to who becomes president next. You see, and in saying that, I don't mean to sort of, frustrate opposition forces, right? They are playing a significant role, and I think they should keep doing what they're doing. I'm not trying to
Right.
frustrate forces to say, look, what you're doing is a waste of time, something. But I'm just saying that practically and theoretically, change has to begin from inside the NRM system, but not even NRM. I think it has to begin from Museveni's family, and for a peaceful.
Internet is probably interrupting the conversation. Internet is interrupting the conversation. Do you hear me? Yusuf, do you hear me? Well, Yusuf seems to be having trouble with the internet, but here he's trying to tell us. So Yusuf is trying to tell us, what Yusuf is trying to tell us is that we may think about transitioning from one person to another. And most of our preference is a transition from Museveni to someone other than the Museveni family members, right? Someone who has not been in the system. And what he's trying to tell us is that that's not going to happen for us. It's not going to happen in the first transition because the very foreign players that the sovereignty bill is trying to deter are not interested in someone they do not know. So while most of us may need a Besigye or a Bobby Wine, the US may not need a Besigye or a Bobby Wine because they do not know him. But he also justifies it by saying that it's not just the foreign actors that may be interested in continuity or stability, stable continuity, but even the players in Kampala, folks who have enriched themselves through corruption, through stealing government resources, those too may not be interested in someone they don't know is going to protect them. So during the last election, the NRM specifically had a slogan saying, protecting the gains. That slogan was not accidental. That slogan is not specifically Museveni craft. That slogan is a craft of the people around him who have continuously enriched themselves and who will do anything in their power to see that if it's not Museveni, it must be one of the colleagues from within. And before Professor Selunkuma dropped off, I wanted to ask him if he's agreeing with Norbert Mao's notion that to have a proper transition, people must work within the current system. And these are tough questions. These are tough conversation to engage in right now. Yet we must engage in these conversations honestly and intellectually, right? So given what is happening right now, given what you are seeing right now, do you think the opposition is doing enough to create trust among the foreign actors such as the United States or the UK or France that they will be ready to receive or to accept anyone other than someone in the pinnacle right now, namely some of the three generals, General Museveni, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, or General Salim Saleh. And we have heard that General Saleh is also getting interest in the presidency. So what are your thoughts? And I want to see these thoughts reflected in the comments, whether you are on Facebook or YouTube or X. I want to see those comments written so that we can interrogate these issues. So I think one of the striking realities in Uganda today is the overlap between the presidency, the military command structure, and the family of power, right? Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back, Dr. Saluku.
I ran out of data.
I know.
And, I have no idea.
You seem to be agreeing with what Mao has been saying all along.
No. Okay, let me go back to what I've been.
Go back to what you have been saying, because I want to distinguish between what you are saying and what Mao is saying, how different it is.
I don't even know. I've not had Mao say Museveni will be good for Uganda. I've not had Mao say that there will be the enormity of local and foreign interests that might sabotage Uganda if you move from Museveni to somebody else will be bad for Uganda. Okay, I mean, first the point I'm making is located in what you might call geopolitical interest around Uganda. Some listen to most of punditry, they seem to think Uganda is the internally contained, and events that happen in Uganda don't respond to shoving and pushing from elsewhere. And I think I need to make that point very strongly. That in fact, you could actually say that events that happen in Uganda are not even local at all. If everything that happens in Uganda is often a reaction, a response, or set in motion by events happening outside Uganda. Okay? So the point I'm building is that there's nervousness around Muhoozi Kainerugaba, but because Muhoozi Kainerugaba has been working with his father, you would say he's trustable to not the Ugandans, but to the interests with so much power that can sabotage Uganda. You see, both local and foreign. Right. And all I'm saying that if you're waiting for a good transition, we need to pace ourselves, right? We need to pace ourselves. It's not going to happen the way we want it, the way that looks ideal. And I give you a very good example is what happened in Egypt. They moved from Mubarak to somebody from completely outside the cartel. That was Muhammad Morsi. And foreign interests gave him 1 year. Okay, and after 1 year, they overthrew him through a coup and took over the country. They gave it back to somebody who had been stealing with the Hosni Mubarak, who is the Sisi. So that what has to be understood. We are not exceptional in this context. You see, now moving to the sovereignty conversation, which is very related to talking transition, is for you to perfectly understand the point I'm making is to see that we don't even have an economy as Uganda. You see,
we don't.
Yeah. We don't. We, as Serumaga has said, we host a foreign economy, right?
Right.
Now, that foreign economy will not look on as events happen in Uganda without them having firm control over how they play out. Is that point understood?
Yes.
There is no way the foreign economy that is being hosted in Uganda from the gold dealers to the people in the mines, the stone mines, to people in coffee, in oil, to people in other agricultural products, to people controlling our banks and our telecom. They will not look on as things happen because they seem to be not interested. You see, they have to have some control over what happens in the country. And I think I worry about those more than local forces. And for you to understand this point, you have to look at Sudan. You see,
Right. So Sudan or South Sudan?
Sudan analysis tend to look like Uganda is exceptional. Look at Sudan. When
Right.
local forces in Sudan finally overthrew Bashir, they were not allowed to take over government. External forces couldn't allow them to take over government. They couldn't allow them to build, so they looked for the soft link within the Sudanese establishment, and they found a man who was in charge of RSF, who in the Ugandan equivalent of SFC, in the war started. You see?
Right.
So local forces fought successfully and overthrew a man called Ali Bashir in Sudan. But they couldn't be allowed to organize government. They wanted a transition of 2 years to organize government. They couldn't be allowed to do that. And finally, because the Americans wanted to have a 10-year transition, so now they can know whether they can trust the next person in charge. The country is in turmoil. Okay. So let me go back to the point the point I'm making is this: that if we are looking towards to a peaceful, stable transition, it will move from Yoweri Museveni, maybe to Kizabi to Muhoozi Kainerugaba, maybe in the next 10 or 5 years to Norbert Mao, who has now started opening with the system, and then maybe the next 5 or 10 you move to maybe Nandala, and then maybe in the next 10 you move to a person who is like Bobby Wine. So you look at Bobby Wine in the next 30 years.
I know. Like, that is 30 years from now.
Yeah. It might not be exactly Bobby Wine, but you look at somebody who is in the character of Bobby Wine. Okay? So, but look, the trajectory of painted is the trajectory of the peaceful transition. Okay? But think about the opposite is once revolution happens. If there's a revolution, then strange things happen that nobody can control them. The picture I've painted is something that is controllable. Right? Is a controlled transition. But if it gets beyond the arena of control, then it could be something else. And
but I think there's a fear. There's a fear that if we go that route that you are suggesting, then we are potentially going to become a Cameroon, or I mean, if trust is only in the Museveni stooges or Museveni family, so Museveni, Muhoozi, Saleh.
You tell me at present, between Cameroon and Sudan, what would you prefer?
That's a tough question to answer.
Okay, let me make it easier for you. Between Sudan and Egypt, which one would you prefer? Because Egypt moved from Mubarak to Mubarak's next in command.
Who was not family though. Yeah, but
no, because
here's the thing. The issue. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Hear me out.
Henry, let me finish this point.
Okay.
You know, the point I'm making is not necessarily about family. Museveni is lucky that the person next in command is a family member.
Right.
The point I'm making is very, very, purely practical. It's nothing to do with family. I'm telling you that
the challenge is like if we let if Muhoozi, for instance, becomes president of Uganda, and he also wants to govern for 40 years like his dad, then Uganda is going to become a de facto monarchy. Because that would be 80 years of the Museveni government in power. Look at the parliament like that just passed the sovereignty bill. And look at how PLU, because they say PLU is affiliated to the chairman of PLU is is General Mohoz, right? So if PLU is systematically replacing the NRM regime, chances are that we are going to get similar people of similar caliber in PLU, and they are by 2031, similar people will come into government who will be praising the same guy, right? Chances are that this guy could potentially govern for as long as his dad has governed.
Henry.
Especially if we are thinking about external forces determining who stays in power.
Henry.
Yeah.
You guys listen to me quite carefully, okay?
Okay.
But Museveni didn't plan to govern Uganda for 40 years.
No. You think
No, he
so?
didn't plan.
What about the 50-year plan?
No, he
Is
doesn't have a plan. No, Museveni, look, if you say Museveni planned to govern Uganda for 40 years, you could say Bashir planned to govern Sudan for 26. You could say Mubarak planned to govern Egypt for 32. You could say Mugabe planned to govern. You could say, because you see, you need to understand that Africa moves in phases. Okay? Africa moves in phases. All the men who came to power in Museveni's time.
Do you remember? Do you remember Mr. Museveni's speech in 1986?
Henry, I'm not talking Museveni's speeches. Okay? I'm giving you a picture. That
Okay.
African politics happens in phases.
Right.
You're treating Uganda as exceptional, and I don't want to do that. Uganda is not unique.
It might be an outlier.
Listen. The people who became presidents in Museveni's time, late 80s, early 90s, all of them stayed as long as they wanted. Do you understand? So Museveni need to plan. It is the men in his generation, wherever they were, they stayed as long as they wanted. Either they made a reckless mistake or finally, a group stood up and over, but they stayed as long as they wanted. Now, listen, go back. The men who came before Museveni's time, 1970, 1980, all of them were overthrown through liberation wars. All of them across the continent. And before that, the men who were in power before that, all of them were overthrown through coups across the continent. So you can plot Uganda in phases. So there's nothing unique about Museveni. Museveni's longevity is not unique to him. It is unique to the continent.
Right.
The entire continent. Look, do you want to tell me Kagame also planned to govern for 40? Bashir planned to govern for 40. Mubarak planned to govern for 40. Eyadema planned to Cameroon Bia. They didn't plan. But the geopolitics, Africa is still a colonized continent. The masters of the time went to the unipolar world in 1980, and the masters of the time were happy with men who gave them access to the continent. What Museveni has done, what is very special about him, he has mastered how to hand over Uganda to foreign capital. He's done quite successfully. Okay?
Right.
And that's what Biya has done quite successfully. That's what Mubarak did successfully. Mugabe's troubles began when he started not wanting to give Zimbabwe to white people. Bashir's troubles began when he started cutting sort of a nationalist posture. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do understand. Yeah.
So if was going to do another 40 years, it will not be up to him. It will be up to the geopolitical context.
Yeah.
See, but what I'm saying, so when you come back to local politics, every doubt Museveni Mugabe knew in terms of playing things to how to keep himself in good books of those who can overthrow government. You, Henry, do you know that across our history as a country, we have never overthrown a leader on our own?
I know that, yeah.
Yeah, so which means we have been able. So the people who overthrow leaders, once you're friends with them,
you can stay as long as they want you.
As long as you want. Yeah. You can stay as long as you need it. But you see, already, you know, I even think Muhozi is good for country because Muhozi is easier to even overthrow. Because you see, Muhozi, before he even takes power, he has offended those who overthrow government. He has threatened. He has threatened. You remember when he was threatening the ambassador of the United States?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was laughing. This boy doesn't understand. You know, America can say we have been threatened enough at the CDF. Now we are launching preemptive strikes on Kampala. You think how many bombs do they want to throw in Kampala for Kampala to collapse?
That's true. That's true.
So you see,
That's funny. Actually, that's really funny that he's still behaving that like that. Even when he's very close to his uncle down south, who has been listening to them because when they asked him to leave the DRC, he did leave, right? So for this guy to be so close to him and not understand those dynamics, like it puzzles me sometimes.
ate ogante ebiddewo tebyenkanankana.
naye ate ayinza bwe kaba nga kakodyo nga batuzannya kazannyo like what if they are playing
Aye kakinyigiriza kuga nti agency yaffe entono. Agency yaffe entono. You see, the bigger politics is over.
So when do
we have to matured. Let me take you to another place.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you know what is happening in Burkina Faso?
Yes.
Yeah, so finally, a young man says we need to launch an anti-colonial struggle. What we need on the African continent is a new anti-colonial struggle to cut through this sort of depoliticized colonialism, right? Where you have a guy who is black, who is African, but all he does is he's a worker for the empire, right? So a young man wakes up and is a low-ranking officer and says, okay, we need an anti-colonial struggle in Burkina Faso. Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that's the thing that the continent wants, and I can tell you to my pain, some of these conversations on the African continent are way too poor. Some of us are happy to blame Museveni, thinking Museveni is the alpha and the omega, thinking Museveni is the boss. Museveni is not the boss. You see, Museveni is not the boss. Museveni is the Arimakatiao.
Right.
All what he has done is that he has been a good caretaker.
Yeah.
Museveni is a better Captain Lugard, is a better Sameka Kunguru, he's been a good caretaker. Right. But you see, when you have Captain Lugard, when the colonial officer sends him to Uganda, when he reaches Uganda, he has power. He can kill, he can order an arrest, he can command things. So when you look at Captain Lugard and you blame Captain Lugard, no, Captain Lugard was a worker. You see? So for us, we focus on our Captain Lugard, we invest our energies on our Captain Lugard, thinking our Captain Lugard is the alpha and omega. No.
He's just a project manager.
Hey.
So when do the opposition get this context? When do they grasp this and utilize it to ensure that instead of thinking about taking power in the next 5 years, they are actually managing who becomes the next trusted PM for the foreign actors? Is there a time when foreign actors will be irrelevant in managing the affairs of our country? Because in listening to you now, what I deduct from this conversation is that even the protection of sovereignty bill is kind of paradoxical, because if really Museveni wants to become a Burkina Faso, then he's soon going to fall out of favor. And this could backfire for him. The internet is not being favorable to us. It's not being favorable to us. But what are the folks listening? What do you guys think about what is going on right now? And specifically, when you hear Dr. Selukuma justify Museveni's stay in power and what we should look at implementing in regard to the peaceful transfer of power? What the considerations that he says we should accept or realistically think about? He says that they should include someone nearest to Museveni, right? In this case, it could be Muhoozi, it could be Saleh, before the likes of the Maos come in. And that could take about 30 years from now. Where will you be in 30 years? And what do you think of these suggestions? And if you agree with this notion of a peaceful transition in Uganda, how do you think we should move forward? These are not rhetorical questions. I actually want you guys to engage with us in these conversations, because these are conversations that have not been had by the people in opposition. And I think it is important for us to start having these conversations more critically and more deliberately. Foreign influence has not started now or ended in any way. It happened even when Idi Amin was the PM or project manager of the country. Most of you have probably seen this video that I'm going to play, but I want you to think critical about it and tell me any sort of comparisons between that era and this era.
Is the morality that we are used to. He's a man who hasn't been socialized. I mean, he's not crazy, except what he lacks is the morality that we are used to. He's a man who hasn't been socialized to the stage that most people have been to.
And we pretty well say Monday that what he does with the Americans will be something that won't frighten the whole world.
Well, yes and no. In a sense, if you know soldiers, you can predict. But then the interaction will be determinant. Like if he gets annoyed there and then, and he feels that those people are his enemies, then he could kill them without remorse.
He does kill people he considers his enemy.
Yes, and that's the way he operates. To him, he operates in an era of friends and enemies. And with enemies, he kills. Friends, he can play with. I don't know, I think you have to understand his personality, that's all. You have to understand his personality and talk to him at his level. He doesn't like intellectual discussions. He doesn't like anything, any concepts that are abstract. He's a man who is left, right. Yes, no. And when he's talking to you, you listen to him. You don't talk back. That's the way he is. Unless you come to a situation where you are friends, then you can fool around and he can make jokes with you.
Were you a friend?
I don't think I was. I was indifferent. I was not with him that much.
Were you afraid of him?
Oh, yes, definitely. Everybody's afraid of Amin when you face him.
Mr. Kaira, what kind of a man is Idi Amin? Is he crazy, as some people say?
Yeah. Well, I disagree with what the people...
What he'll do is he'll go over and shoot from behind you, but there won't be anything there but film.
Okay.
Is Amin an intelligent man?
Yes, he is. He is very intelligent. You can tell by his intelligence by the way he has picked up English. He has been able to learn English in a very short time, and now he speaks like a pro.
How has he survived so long?
Because he has got that instinct of a soldier to survive. And he is a good soldier.
If there came the day that he did not survive and someone else took over, the people who are under him, would they be just as Amin is?
At the moment, the people he has got are people like him. Some of them are even worse than him. So if any one of them took over, many of them in his ranks, it would be just a repetition of what Amin is.
It's been said that Amin has guided massive killings in his role as president. Has he ever personally killed, to your knowledge? Does he do the job himself sometimes?
Yes, sometimes he does. To my knowledge, yes.
You have personal knowledge of that?
Yes.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
In the prison system that a portion of which you ran, what were conditions like there?
Our prison service, I would say, was one of the best. Was one of the best in the world. If I don't sound to be, well, maybe I've got that. I have to think about it.
Okay.
The fact that I was a member of it, but I would say it was one of the best because of the policies that were there with the director of prisons before Amin took over. The policies were towards rehabilitation, and that's why I happened to come into this country to learn. In fact, you don't find too many educated people in prison systems in the world. That in Uganda, there were a lot of educated people who had degrees in criminology and criminal justice. But now, I mean, he has replaced those with his idiots. And the same is going to happen, yes.
Talk to me a little bit about him. I mean, what was your first impression of him after seeing him operate a little bit, from a personal point of view?
From a personal point of view, I knew him as early as 64. That was when I was a boxer and he was a boxer. And I used to meet him in training. And that was it. And then he was not as dangerous as he is because he didn't have the rank that he is.
But he's a man who can enjoy a good time.
Oh, well, most of the time he has a good time. That's all, until you annoy him. Then you are an enemy and he wants to get rid of you. And this is, I think, the training got as a soldier, which is you follow orders, and when you have obstacles, deal with them by getting rid of the obstacles. And that means even when you're a human being, he just has to kill you. So he's still basically a...
Right. Well, that's still foreign interference in one way or another, foreign actors determining how the country can be managed or governed. Of course, to many, this may not be what you want to think about, but of course, we also have to understand how foreign actors behave and who they choose to sustain in power. A lot has been going on. It's 1:12 right now. The conversation has kind of veered off because of the internet and other technical challenges that we have both been facing. But let us think more on how we can engage in this conversation, bring in more people to engage in the conversation, but also to interrogate some of these issues in a more realistic manner than how conversations are happening in Uganda today, right? Beyond the sovereignty bill, beyond the military power and the familial structure. How do we realistically think about the transition from one man to another? How do we realistically think about foreign actors, but also internal forces that are potentially too rich right now to let Museveni just go, right? How do we deal with these different actors to ensure that we put mechanisms in place that are going to usher in a peaceful transfer of power? These are questions that you should be interrogating yourselves. So tonight, the conversation was never simply about one bill. It was about the architecture of power, how it evolves, how it protects itself, and how citizens respond when meaningful sovereignty itself becomes contested, right? Uganda now faces difficult but necessary questions. Can a state remain democratic while centralizing authority? can sovereignty belong to the people if participation is increasingly regulated? And what does peaceful transition look like in a system built around continuity? But also, how do we manage external actors that have vested interests in the land of Uganda? These are not opposition questions. These are national questions. And each and every one of us must be engaged in asking these questions. Because if we don't directly engage ourselves, then we are alienating our participation in the very conversation that must be bringing us together as a people. I always like to hear from people. I always want to hear from you guys who are watching. Sometimes you can do this through questions by commenting or choosing to come and join us in the studios. If you're interested in joining us in the studio, let me know. Communicate with me directly so that I can invite you for us to come and have these conversations. This is like the citizens round the table, right? And when I talk about citizens, I would like to hear from every person, wherever you are. If you have ideas that you think people must listen to, that we should be able to interrogate, I think this is an opportunity for us to engage, right? And we must approach this with extreme caution, because sovereignty is not merely about protecting the state. It is also about empowering the people. And any law that weakens the people's ability to participate, question, organize, and speak, that law risks undermining the very sovereignty it claims to defend. So Uganda does not need less participation in the name of sovereignty. It needs more sovereignty through participation, your participation. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. I think I'm gonna stop the conversation here. But again, I want to thank Mr. Iga for joining us and for participating actively on the conversation. I'm going to stop the stream. We can engage more closely on another day. Thank you so much. This is the state of the nation. Irifa Mwanga. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Henry Sala.